They told us it was about justice, about courage, about standing up when no one else would. But somewhere along the way, the capes stopped standing for freedom and started standing for order, for silence, for obedience. It was subtle at first. Shield logos tucked behind smiles. Missiles launched with patriotic music swelling in the background. A soldier here, a general there. But before we knew it, the superheroes weren't fighting the system. They were working for it. We didn't notice because they made it look cool. They gave us charming billionaires, wounded soldiers, quiet assassins with tragic pasts. They made the war machine look human, gave it heart, and we mistook it for hope. Every battle reinforced control. Every victory secured the hierarchy. Every villain was just a reminder that the system must be defended, not questioned, not challenged, just preserved, with more weapons, more oversight, more surveillance. The more we cheered, the less we noticed what we were cheering for. We thought we were watching rebels, watching icons, but we were watching uniforms, watching propaganda wear a mask of heroism, and no one told us to stop. In this video, we're going to pull apart the illusion Marvel built. We'll explore how the MCU sold military values as morality, how heroes became soldiers in disguise, and how what we thought was freedom was really control, wrapped in a costume, lit with a spotlight, and broadcast to the world. From the very beginning, the Marvel Cinematic Universe felt different. It had flash, it had charm, it had heart. But buried under all that was something else, something colder, something organized. The kind of coordination that doesn't come from artists, it comes from agencies. Iron Man didn't just invent a suit, he built a weapon. A sleek, shiny weapon that blurred the line between defense and dominance. And we cheered him on. Not because we misunderstood, but because we were trained to admire that kind of power. Then came S.H.I.E.L.D., then came surveillance. Then came a world where every solution involved containment, regulation, elimination. It wasn't about saving people, it was about managing them, keeping threats in check, even if those threats were just scared citizens. What looked like heroism was actually a chain of command. Orders passed through polished teeth, smiles hiding strategy. These weren't rebels, they were operatives, wearing the mask of virtue while delivering enforcement with a side of justice. The MCU never asked us to question the system. It asked us to root for it. From the first drone strike to the last helicarrier, it wasn't about protecting freedom. It was about packaging obedience as entertainment. What's wild is how deeply people ignored the signals, the military contracts, the Air Force cameos, the endless parade of uniforms standing just out of frame. People watched these stories thinking they were revolutionary, when they were just camouflage. Every time someone questioned authority, they were brought back in line. Tony went rogue, only to fund S.H.I.E.L.D. Steve resisted orders but still led armies. Even Black Widow's whole arc was about redemption through service, not liberation. And don't get me started on how many villains are just distorted reflections of state power. Obadiah, Red Skull, Killian, all of them weaponizing the same tech and tactics as the so-called heroes. The only difference was which flag they fought under. These weren't stories of freedom, they were stories of enforcement. These characters weren't escaping systems, they were reinforcing them. And the MCU made that palatable with humor, with charm, with explosions that distracted from the ideology. It's infuriating how effective it was. They made propaganda taste like popcorn, and somehow, most of us asked for seconds. It hurts when you look back and realize what you missed. You wanted to believe these characters were doing good. You wanted to believe in sacrifice, in loyalty, in saving lives. But beneath the capes and catchphrases, there was always a cost. The deeper you look, the more those victories start to feel hollow. Wanda became a weapon before she became a woman. Bucky was passed from one handler to another. Natasha only earned forgiveness through utility. These weren't journeys of healing. They were reassignments. Every arc felt like it was written to serve someone else's agenda. Even Peter, Sweet Peter, was drafted into an ideological war before he finished high school. He built drones for a billionaire. He fought wars he never understood. And he smiled through all of it, because he thought he was helping. No one told him he was just another cog in the machine. You start to see the trauma differently. You start to see how often pain gets packaged as character development. Not so they can break free, but so they can be molded, shaped into tools that fit the bigger plan. Their scars weren't healed, they were weaponized. It's sad because it worked. We fell in love with people who never really had a choice, and we called it heroism. But love without awareness is just blindness. And that's exactly what the system counted on. There's a brilliance to how the MCU built this illusion. It's cinematic sleight of hand. Each installment layered with just enough heart to hide the hardware. You think you're watching a story about love, or grief, or revenge. But what you're really watching is allegiance. The trick wasn't just good, it was masterful. The branding is flawless. flags draped in sparks, uniforms stitched with sincerity. They show you hero shots, then cut to government briefings, and somehow it flows. Somehow it feels natural. That's not by accident. That's design. It's storytelling, engineered with the precision of a missile. Look at how they built trust. With charisma, with sacrifice, with well-timed jokes between missions. They made it easy to follow orders because the leaders smiled, because the collateral was off-screen, because the world always needed saving. They disguised policy with personality. Even the villains were orchestrated to justify escalation. For every threat, a bigger budget, a better drone, a newer suit. The cycle fed itself until there was no room for civilian solutions. Only responses born in labs and war rooms. Every solution was just another blueprint for control. It's awe-inspiring how complete the machine became. And even more shocking that so few saw the gears turning beneath the spectacle. We weren't watching rebellion, we were watching recruitment. And we called it cinema. But it's not too late to look again, to peel back the curtain and see the truth behind the flash. To stop asking who won the battle and start asking who benefits from the fight. Awareness doesn't ruin the magic, it deepens it. And with that depth comes the power to change what comes next. Stories don't stop evolving because we see through them. They grow, they stretch, they adapt. And once we recognize the patterns, we can demand more from them. Demand characters who aren't just pawns in a prettier war. Demand arcs that build meaning, not obedience. There's a future where superhero tales don't default to dominance, where power isn't proof of virtue, where peace isn't a punchline. And maybe that future starts with questioning what we've accepted for so long. It starts with choosing stories that don't always end in rubble. We can still love these characters, still honor their journeys, but we don't have to swallow the message without chewing first. We can ask why every solution involves violence, why every disagreement leads to destruction, why saving the world always means saving the status quo, and whether that status quo is worth saving at all. There's a better version of these stories waiting to be told, and maybe, just maybe, we're ready to tell them. Not because the past was wrong, but because the future deserves more. The tragedy isn't that the MCU failed us. The tragedy is that it succeeded too well. It made us believe that power was always righteous, that the badge was always earned, that the chain of command was always noble. And in doing so, it softened our resistance. It dressed obedience in armor, wrapped conformity in charisma. It told us to cheer for missiles if they were launched by someone we liked, to trust surveillance if it had a cool interface, to forgive violence if it came with a redemption arc. It taught us not to question the hands behind the curtain. Heroes stopped being rebels. They became brands, tools, operators who answered to systems instead of challenging them. And we kept watching, kept clapping, kept buying tickets to the same lesson wrapped in a different color palette. Our loyalty was never to freedom, it was to familiarity. The MCU told us it was about saving the world, but more often, it was about stabilizing the world, preserving power, reinforcing the same hierarchies it pretended to disrupt. It was control dressed as courage, and we loved it because it made us feel safe. And now, we have to decide what kind of stories we want next. Because if we're going to keep calling them heroes, they need to start acting like it. Otherwise, they're just uniforms with catchphrases. Thank you for watching the whole video. I make videos because of my love for Star Wars and Marvel. I've been asked countless times how I get my subtitles, and I generate them automatically with a tool I built. That same tool can be used here on my website. It's completely free and doesn't require signing up. My website contains the subtitle generator that is perfect for any video, blogging post, where you can sign up with your email and receive notifications for when I post, and also my 3 channels. Critical Analysis Hub focuses on Star Wars and Marvel movies. Critical Analysis Hub Plus looks at Star Wars and Marvel shows. And Critical Analysis Hub XP centers on video games, like The Last of Us series, Jedi Survivor, and GTA 5. Thank you for being a fan.